Hey everyone, welcome back to a brand new video. I'm going to take you through all my GoPros, how I get the shots I do on and off the bike. We're going to look at how I get time lapses when I'm building and how I get all the different POV shots I do with and without a gimbal. When I first started shooting on a GoPro regularly, I quickly noticed that they weren't very stable, especially in the days of like the Hero 3 and 4 before any sort of like hyper smooth was out there, and it was simply like too shaky to be enjoyable to watch unless you were riding like smooth dirt jumps or something. And that's when I kind of looked into gimbals and I noticed how good those shots looked. And I've been running a gimbal on my chest mount ever since. Still to this day, even though I do have the GoPro Max, and I'm going to get into that and you're going to see how stable these shots are, I still love the look of the gimbal from time to time. And my gimbal of choice to this day is the Karma Grip, the GoPro brand one. And it is huge, like look how long this thing is, and it's heavy as well. But that is kind of what works in its favor. If you can have something that's really stable, you can like really put into your chest, then when you're doing bigger jumps and rougher terrain, it's not going to get knocked around so easily and you're going to hold your shot. I've used smaller gimbals, like the wearable gimbal is one brand I have in mind particularly that works well. It's a lightweight, but I mean if you knock it by accident when you're railing a corner or you overshoot a jump, it's just going to like lose it. Like the motors aren't going to be strong enough and it's going to kind of just like go off to its side and your shot's going to get all messed up. The only issue with it is you can't run a camera any newer than the Hero 7 Black, and for that reason I still run the Hero 7 Black right here. And up until I would say like 2 or 3 months ago, I was using this for all my time lapses when I was out there building, because it has the exact same function as the newest GoPro Hero 9, just maybe not quite as many settings, especially in the time warp mode. The way to go is with the GoPro Performance chest mount. This thing is nice and sturdy. It's a lot better than the older chest mounts. The straps are stronger. You have this nice big surface area here that is gonna make it so it's not wobbling around on your body. And I find like, because I have a shorter torso and I am a shorter rider, I like to run it up higher, as close to my face as possible up here. And that's gonna allow me to angle the camera down slightly more and still be able to see far ahead, and you catch more of the handlebars. I feel like being a smaller rider does put you at a bit of a disadvantage because the camera almost feels closer to the handlebars all the time, and I want the widest field of view possible. So that's why I run it up high like that. So keep that in mind when you're mounting that on your chest, where it's gonna go based on your size. I guess it's really up to like personal preference and the look of the shot as well. So play around with it. Try mounting your chest high and then low, and then see kind of what it looks like. On the Hero 7, the setting I find myself using the most for POV footage is Superview. Actually, I use Superview all the time, and then I'm shooting in either 4K or 2.7K, and I'm always going after some nice motion blur effect. I'm never really ever shooting slow motion, so it's either 24 frames a second or 30. Before Instagram Reels and TikTok came out, and Instagram Stories even, I wasn't really ever shooting vertically because I didn't have any content to post vertically. Even with like the regular 16:9 GoPro clips, I would just square crop them for my Instagram feed. But I'm finding it's a lot more common to post vertically on social media, and I've had to kind of adapt, and using the gimbal on the chest mount isn't the ideal setup for that system. So what I've been using is the GoPro Hero Max, and I've barely done any 360 footage on this camera. All I've really been using it for is POV footage with the one lens open, because that gives you the widest field of view possible, more than even any of the GoPro Heroes, which is awesome. I love that about it. And yeah, I find it to be a really nice camera for it. You don't get a higher resolution than 1440 by 1080, so you're not gonna get that nice smooth 4K footage you get from a new GoPro Hero 9 or something. But I mean, the angles that you're getting and the stabilization you're getting out of this camera, I find is far superior to the Heroes. And I feel like you don't need anything higher resolution than 1080p for the internet anyways. Here's how I set up the GoPro Max on my chest mount. I can do a few different mounts. Right now I'm mounting it vertically a lot of the time for my social media posting. And what I'm doing is I'm putting one extra mount on the camera so it can be sitting sideways. And then the trick here is to not have it perfectly level with your chest. If you've noticed with like GoPro POV shots, if you ever have mounted a GoPro to your chest, you always have to have it angled up slightly. Well, with the Max, this isn't the case as much because it's shooting so wide, you don't have to worry that much, but you still want to have it angled up slightly. So I have it angled up slightly. Typically it's hanging off to my right a bit. It can be on your right or left, but whatever side you have it hanging to, have it kind of like angled to that opposite direction a little bit. So for example, I have it hanging off to the right slightly, then angled to the left and angled partly up. That makes it so like the footage is a little more centered and it looks great. In terms of the camera settings I use, I mix this up all the time, but it is important to always be in max Superview all the time. Frame rate is completely up to you. Do 60 frames a second or higher if you want to catch slow motion footage. Use 24 frames a second or 30 if you want some nice motion blur. For myself, I use 30 frames a second 90% of the time.
Yeah.
When I'm shooting for YouTube and I'm using the GoPro Max, I don't need to get those vertical shots. I want to shoot regularly in landscape mode. What I'm going to do for that is just take off that extra mount and I'm going to mount it regularly. The key is to really find an angle that works well for you. Luckily with the Max, it is so wide that there's a lot of wiggle room there, and I find even in post, I am adjusting kind of where the frame is sitting in the shot there. And I find like a really nice angle to use is when I mount it on my chest mount, rather than putting it up high like I would with a gimbal, I mount it on the lower side of things, and then I have it pointed up slightly the same way I would have it pointed up when it is vertical. Because when you're leaned forward, your camera's gonna drop down, so you wanna have it looking up slightly. I found that works great, and I'm using all the exact same settings I would if it was mounted vertically.
Oh yeah.
That's how the ride-in shots are done. Let's get into the build lapses because it's so fun and easy to use a GoPro for those. I use both the Hero 7 and the new Hero 9 for this. And now I'm using both cameras when I'm out building so I can get like the most amount of shots in one day. I'm using the exact same setting on both cameras. The advantage of the 9 is it is a little higher quality and you have a little more settings to play with, but for the most part, it's almost identical. The setting I'm using for these cameras is I'm going into time-lapse mode, not time warp, but time-lapse, and then I want to shoot in a wide field of view. You can honestly do whatever you want. I'm finding the wide field of view works really great. It catches a lot. You can get the camera pretty close to you when you're building. And then once I have that all set up, I want to play with the frame rate that it's shooting at, right? Because if you do a time lapse too fast, you're going to get a really long shot with not enough progress. And if you make it like too slow and it's taking a shot like every 20 seconds or something, it's going to take forever to show any sort of progress from your building that day. I kind of meet somewhere in the middle. I'm shooting frames every 10 seconds at 4K. The trick to using 4K when you're shooting these time-lapse videos is, if you've noticed, I'm like zooming my footage in and out a little bit as you're seeing the time-lapses play by, and I think that's like really nice to watch visually, and it adds a little bit of motion to the shots. And then if I'm dragging that footage into a 1080p timeline, I have a lot of like room to work with because I can crop in really tight and then zoom out. To reiterate, I'm shooting in 4K, I'm taking a shot every 10 seconds, and I'm using that wide field of view. Sometimes I'll dial it down to every 5 seconds if I feel like, oh, I didn't get enough footage today and I want to show a little more progress. Or if I'm like documenting a slap pack, say I have a giant lip that's going to take me like 40 minutes to pack, but I want a shot that's more than like 8 seconds long, because I find typically I get 10 seconds of footage for every hour of work when I have it set at the 10-second setting. That's like a rough estimate. It's basically around there. But if I can like double that, if I make it take a shot every 5 seconds, and then you really see a lot more details as I'm packing a jump or a berm. So dial it down to 5 seconds for those detail shots. And that's everything I'm currently doing to get the GoPro shots I do right now. And I'm gonna play around with some more things in the future here. I really wanna take this Hero 9 Black and try riding with it, no gimbal, to see how the shots look. I did lose the cover for it the other day, so I gotta get a new one before I do that. But yeah, I'm really curious to see how this camera compares to the Max even in terms of stability. All right, that's it for the video. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you found that super helpful. See you guys next time.